Chapter 22, Generics in the Real World, Solution Movie 22.2. In this example, you will use what you've learned about generics to create a new business class. Now I'm going to be covering steps in here that create new entities in an entity data model and create classes from those entities, and my instructions are very brief. That's because they're very detailed instructions that you can read in Book 3 on Xcode. So in our generics demo project, which I happen to have open, we're instructed to select the generics demo data model. So we can see we have two entities here already, company entity and person entity. And from these entities, we've already generated the company entity class here and the person entity class. So whenever you make a change to an existing entity data model, instead of just making the changes directly to it, you want to make a new version of the model, because that allows core data to look at the old data model, compare it to the new data model, and actually automatically update your existing database to a new version. That's called lightweight migration. So that's why we're following step 2. We select Editor, Add Model Version Number. Say Editor, Add Model Version. And we're going to set the number to generics demo, I like to do 2, and say Finish. So now notice we have two subnodes underneath our generics demo data model, our original and generics demo 2. So notice the one that's our original has a little green check mark next to it. That indicates it is the active data model. So if I were to run the app right now, it would still use that particular data model. So in step 3, we select that parent node, and then we're going to File Navigator, and under Model Version, we're going to set the current version to generics demo 2. Now in older versions of Xcode, and it may still be true here, when you first change that, it's a little cloudy which model is selected. There was a bit of a bug there. So I want to make sure you really have generics demo 2 selected. Maybe click off of it, click back on it again before you follow the next step. So we selected generics demo 2 in the project navigator. And now in the data model editor, we're going to create a new office entity. So I can do that. I can click plus, double click here. I can call that office entity. And our next part said create it with 2 required string attributes named building and office number. So first of all, I click plus. I'm going to call this attribute building. We will say it's a string. And over here in my data model inspector, I'm going to uncheck this because it's not optional. It is required. Temporarily get rid of that. And there's another office number attribute I want to add. So I say office number. It is also a string. And it is required, so I'll uncheck optional. All right, so now we have a new office entity with 2 new attributes. Our next step says generate a new office entity class from the entity. So the way we do that is we select File, New, File. Under iOS, we select Core Data. On the right side, we select NS Manage Object subclass and click Next. So it says which data model do we want to manage? It's generics demo 2. I click Next, and it's assuming I want office entity since we haven't created one from that yet. So I click Next, I click Create, and there it is, office entity.swift. And it has 2 string properties, 1 building, 1 office number. So I'm going to move this down below here. So now we create a new office class, subclassed from a business object. So let's take that first part. So I'm going to click here because I want the new class to appear under it. I right click and say New File. This time I'm doing a source code file that is Swift. I click Next. And this class is named Office. Click Create, and here it is. So it's saying that this class is subclass from a business object. So let's go ahead and do that. So I say class, and I can select Swift subclass. So my class Office is a subclass of a business object. If I press Tab, I can get rid of this. Now it says we need to use generics to associate it with the Office entity class, because you'll notice here we're getting a compiler error where we need to specify generic type arguments. So we'll start here and we'll say T, Office entity is our associated class. And we pass that up the hierarchy, a business object. And we've done it. We have declared an Office business object that has an associated Office entity object. And if we do Command B, we can see that it builds. Now we have two more steps. It says in the data model editor, select the Office entity class, then go to the data model inspector and set the class to generics demo.officeentity. So if I select here, Office entity selected. So this doesn't happen automatically. You must set the name of the project as a prefix and a period in front of the entity name. So now we want to test the class in the view controller's view.did.load. So I'm going to the viewcontroller.swift, and we'll add some test code. I'd like to show you, if we go to the quick help, that if I double click here, we can see it is an array of Office entities. I can select here. This is an Office entity. So all we had to do in order to make that magic happen with generics was in the Office class specify Office entity as the associated value. All right, so let's run the project. We hit our breakpoint, stepping through our person entity, company entity, and here's our new one, Office. Create the Office business object. We get all entities. There's none because we haven't added any yet. And we step over, we can create a new entity and assign values to it. So that worked. We created a brand new Office business object, associated our Office entity with it, and it's working great.